All right, so welcome to our Rotary Earth Network Club with featuring our Earth Talks.
The rotary four-way test of the things we think, say, or do is
First,
is it the truth?
is the environmental information accurate, science-based, and transparent?
Second, is it concerned?
Does it protect people, ecosystems, and future generations?
Third, will it build goodwill and better friendship?
Does it encourage collaboration, shared responsibility, and community trust?
Fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Does it improve environmental health, human well-being, and long-term sustainability?
Thank you so much. That is absolutely beautiful. Thank you. All right. We are very thankful to be able to host Joanna Jurdi today. Joanna is an architect with a Master's of Science in Biomimicry from Arizona State University, with over 15 years of experience in architectural design and project development, holding the purpose of creating sustainable, well-adapted, environmentally viable, regenerative systems in human design. Furthermore, pushing boundaries to show to new possibilities of creating conditions conducive to life.
Thank you so much, Karen. Thank you for the entire Earth Talks team. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm very excited to share biomimicry with you. So I'm proud to be part of the Lebanon Rotary Club Lebanon ECHO, which is the first specifically environmentally engaged Rotary Club. Our talk today is from cells to systems. We want to talk about nature and how nature evolved and how it would inspire us. So when we talk about evolutionary science and how life evolved throughout history for 4.8 billion years, it took about at least 2.5 billion years just for one cell to evolve and develop and become a complex cell that could replicate itself and create the biodiversity that we have. Whereas we as humans, our history is about 300,000 years. So the history of mankind in relation to the history of life, the existence of life on Earth is as such a fraction of a second from a year. So life has been evolving for 4.8 billion years, and it created so much diversity. And it actually has a lot of wisdom and so much to teach us. So from a cell, a prokaryotic cell, this is the simple cell that started with a kind of cloudy nucleus, and it developed and became this complex cell that has different parts and organelles that each have a role, and they cooperate together in order to create this complex cell that interacts with what is outside. So life was created from having boundary and a system of networks between members that have different roles. So as per the evolutionary biologist Lynn Margulis, who did the research on how cells evolved, and she noticed that the prokaryotic cell, the first simple cell, has developed into a complex cell by having those different bacteria come together and self-organize to create the different organelles within this one cell. So actually this complex cell, which is the eukaryotic cell, and that has all those complex organelles, were first of all different separate cells, simple bacteria, that just came together and played within one boundary, and they created this complex cell that was able to procreate and evolve and create the biodiversity that we have today. And that tells you that there's so much wisdom in nature and in the process of how nature evolves, how nature cooperates, how it to conditions. So and it was first appeared in the 1950s. The purpose it had was to learn from nature, learn from mechanisms in nature in order to improve machines, weapons, automation, drones. But is it enough? Is that enough? Doesn't nature have more to teach us than just being more faster, stronger, more efficient? And the answer is actually yes. And that's where biomimicry was born. It was this yearning to learn more deeply from nature. So biomimicry it's composed from the words bio, meaning life, and meaning imitate. Biomimicry is the conscious emulation of nature's genius. So what makes biomimicry special is most of all ethos. So the essence of the ethos of biomimicry is that life creates conditions conducive to life. So life was always there to provide an environment that helps create new life, that helps other life forms to evolve, to change, to adapt, and to flourish and create more diversity. So ethos is a deep respect of life and with nature and its core values. So we find in nature that there are many common patterns and values actually. That nature has a lot of values and there's a lot of symbiosis, a lot of cooperation. This is the essential core lesson that we feel compelled to learn in when studying nature. The second, so these are the three pillars of biomimicry, the elements of biomimicry. The second element is reconnect. So naturally, we're part of nature. So we're innately part of nature. But we need to really be conscientious of that and not see ourselves as a part of nature or different. And we really reconnect to nature and strengthening our bond with nature, being true naturalists, observing, asking questions, learning. I mean, these are very important to develop our sense of being part of nature because it's what we truly are. Emulate. So the part that is most interesting in biomimicry that most professionals are interested in is emulate. So it's learning from nature to apply what we learn in design. So we learn from form, process, and ecosystem. So the process of biomimicry, it starts with, understanding nature, discovering, and then we ideate. We take lessons from nature, we abstract them, and we start creating ideas for our design, for our human design. And the important thing in biomimicry is that we need to make sure that what we create is also sustainable and it can also be part of nature without harming any. So in order to actually resemble nature, because that's how nature is. So when we emulate forms, so we have so many examples that you can see on the internet about, how we emulate forms in nature, such as, the kingfisher that inspired the train in Japan. I know other examples that are very widespread on the internet and that I invite you to research. Processes like such as photosynthesis, like solar PVs, they transform the solar energy into electricity, etc. And also systems. Systems is also very important and something that I'm going to focus on in my talk today because in nature there's no such thing as waste. So everything is circular, everything transforms and to its essence. And the way that we produce and we cooperate as well and we work together, we could learn from systems in a way to not create waste, to have circular systems. Like today we talk about circular economy. And this is actually ingrained in nature. So I'm not going to talk about, examples that are already known. I chose to talk about, projects that I did, to give a different example. Emulating form. For example, we had a project in Nigeria and we wanted to adapt to nature and to be resource efficient. So we wanted to have an architectural project, a residential building that doesn't consume a lot of artificial heating, artificial cooling or heating. So in the case of Nigeria, it's cooling. So we want it to be naturally integrated and that it be well ventilated and that it could be cooled naturally. So we took inspiration from the leaves and how leaves can adapt to heavy rains and heat. And we noticed that most leaves in tropical climates, they have a waxy coating, they're undulated, and that allows them to be resilient in heat and in heavy rains and wind. So this inspired our building system to have all these core spaces that allow wind to circulate and to have like interior spaces that create microclimates and make the air cooler. And there are many examples like that in nature that could inspire having microclimates that don't require having heavy artificial systems. Because what happened in modern architecture is that architecture was being done the same in different climates and it didn't take into consideration the integration within the specific place they are. And it's very important to have the genius of place. That's something that we understand the climate that we live in order to be well adapted. Another example of emulating process, so like solar panel mimic leaves and they take the energy of the sun and they transform it into heat or electricity. Another process we tackled was how do we reach water efficiency? So in places in our regions, like in desertic spaces, how do we create ways to acquire water that without having a very high cost and in a way that is efficient. So we went to extreme climates like the Namibian desert, and we discovered a wonderful organism, which is this is an endemic plant that only grows in the Namibian desert. And what it actually does is that it creates longitudinal leaves that have like sections and hydrophilic material. So it's the waxen seeds is hydrophilic. It attracts the dew from the atmosphere and it channels the water within its core, and it has very deep stomach. And this is a process that helps it actually condense the dew from the atmosphere and fill its space with water. And we it's noticed that there are so many organisms that live, many insects and reptiles that take this plant as a living space. So that tells you the genius and the how nature creates space for life to flourish. So, and the application that we wanted also to is how to create efficient dew catchers by mimicking how the process of the attracts dew. And by understanding the process, we can integrate it in design to create more efficient dew catchers. Another example is water desalination. So we take inspiration from the mangrove tree. Mangrove trees actually exist on estuaries. So it's where the water has a high salinity. So they have very brilliant processes where they desalinate the water, they have a chemical process where they crystallize the salt particles in order to absorb the water. And they have of bringing air to their. So it's a very beautiful system that could really inform desalination in a way that is more efficient. So emulating nature. So one of my favorite evolutionary biologists, Lynn Margulis, says if you really want to study evolution, go outside because symbiosis is everywhere. It's an important factor of nature. So everything evolved from cooperation. And there are so many examples of that, whether it's inside the ground with all the fungi that creates this worldwide web that transports nutrients to trees and plants, or the bacteria, or the cooperation between fungi and algae that created the the moss and all the living beings, the primary living beings that gave birth to forests, to complex forests. So a living system has a boundary that allows it to exchange with its environment. So there's the boundary of identity. So what differentiates living beings is that they have a boundary that is not closed, but it's a boundary that allows specific elements to enter and that gives also other elements. It creates a surface of contact with what is outside, where everything that is outside is processed and is absorbed. And there's an exchange that happened between this inside and this outside. There's a network inside. There's autopoiesis. This is a study that was done by Umberto Maco, who worked a lot on how self-organization happens in nature. And it's very recurrent. The fact that there's a network, there's always organisms that play different role and that work together in order to have a common purpose or to help each other strive. The living system also responds to outer disturbances by using feedback loops. So there's a communication also. So nature communicates, nature gives information and receives information, and nature adapts to. And then there's the culminated adaptations that also creates a wealth of knowledge. So there's an inner knowing inside every organism. Okay, so this is like observations. These are pictures that I took in nature and a reflection of how things happen. Like, for example, the fact that cyanobacteria. So this is the first bacteria that was able to process the sun and create carbon matter, sequester carbon from photosynthesis, and it formed the lichen. That was the symbiosis between the algae and the fungi, which were the pioneers of forests. And all those small bacteria and then this lichen that grew on the surface of rocks, it created soil. And then this soil gave space to plants. And this is how an entire complex forest evolved. Started from those small, simple elements and those small symbiotic relationships that happen between algae and fungi and bacteria. So it's just fascinating entering into all those details of how life evolved and came to what it is today. It's enchanting and fascinating and it's really wonderful. And there's so much to learn from that. So for example, this is a picture that I took when I was on a hike, and I noticed that complex mature forests, you have biodiversity and different plants all living together at very close proximity. So you don't have monoculture, you don't have a specific kind of tree that is replicated everywhere and with nothing else. Actually, there are plants and there are ground covers and shrubs. They all live together, and they actually they're also symbiotic with each other. They help each other. Like for example, this specific forest that is in the Mediterranean forest, you have the pine, and pines create microclimates, and they protect the area from excessive sunlight and heat. The oaks also create the oaks, and they create rich soil, so they fertilize the soil, while rosemary and sage attract bees, and they help pollination for all of the plants. The erangels keep the humidity in the soil. So every single plant in this forest also plays a role in order to benefit the entire ecosystem. So actually, we can see that the forest itself functions like one cell. So there's a pattern, there's a system, there's the same logic that is replicated and that is common within the cell and at the macro level, at the level of the forest. And this makes us think that, okay, maybe within our systems and our communities, the same principles also can be valid. So the characteristic of a mature ecosystem is complexity, richness, and diversity. There's a web-like food chain and a wide distribution of nutrients, long and complex life cycles that transmit, transform, and decompose nutrients with an important role to detritivores, attunement to feedback loop. So there's communication. This communication allows the control of species, populations, and to maintain the balance in nature. All elements are nutrients. So a very important thing in nature is that there's no such thing as waste. So anything that is discarded by an organism is a nutrient for another organism. So dominance of interconnected and symbiotic relationships, regenerative and maintenance of self through disturbances. So self-preservation, maintaining integrity, and using local resources efficiently as well. Resource efficiency is an important trait in a mature natural ecosystem. I want to talk about a project where we mimicked natural ecosystems. We created a farm area in Nigeria, and it was farming, and at the same time we needed to have agriculture. So we conceived a way to have like artificial lakes where we have the tilapia, we have the fish culture, the PC culture, and then we had also azolla cultivation. And what happened is that we used this water to provide for irrigation, for irrigating the agricultural area, and the compost is also creates fertilizer, and it also cultivates black flies in order to create the food for cattle. And that's how we created a circular system that is so creating this farm helped us really understand how we could find ways that where every function is complementary to another function, and it serves the benefit of another element in this specific system. So it's a closed loop system. Everything serves another purpose and is part of this circular process that happens within it. And basically, it's a land that doesn't require fertilizers or pesticides. Everything is present within the soil. So, for example, for repel pests, we could use plantations. Diverse plantations, having diverse complementary plants, of which some plants have insect repellent properties, and instead of having monoculture. So, thinking of those processes that imitate nature in the way that they work together and create solutions. So, when we think about living systems, we always see that there's something common from the microsystem to the macro system, whether it's from the cell, digestive system, the nervous system, any different system, even in our communities. Like, for example, if we have a wildfire, naturally everyone in the community takes a different role. So you have the firefighters, the people who are bringing people to shelters. You have the people who are giving and receiving information. So normally everybody takes a role, and they create a system that fights the fire naturally by taking on different roles and helping each other and communicating. So this is one way of mimicking nature, actually. So we want to see how we can mimic. And for that, in biomimicry, we have something very important that is really a core that was conducted in different ecosystems. and that really brought communalities, common patterns, common ethics and laws that nature operates by. So, for example, we know that Earth's operating conditions that are consistent is that life operates on water, sunlight, and gravity. We have a limited amount of resources that is constrained to this planet Earth, and we need to be mindful in how we manage those resources. So our first principle is being locally attuned and responsive. We need to cultivate cooperative relationships, like for example, that created a cooperative system with the anemone, so it cleans the anemone and the anemone protects the clownfish from predators. We leverage cyclic processes, like for example, how frogs, when in the water, and as the water becomes more scarce with the hot season, with the summer, the tadpoles develop and they're capable of living outside of the water environment. So there's the following of the cyclic processes. The way they develop is in tune with how nature also changes. Using locally available material, the most fascinating animal that uses locally available material is a bird while building its nest. So we see how a bird can take old spider webs and moss and the lichen and old leaves and branches and put them together to create this nest. And it's something that is really fascinating. And the diversity, and it's really specific to its environment. And then using feedback. So nature gives information and receives information. Like there's a biologist called Simone that studied the World Wide Web, the Wood Wide Web. She noticed that, plants communicate with each other below the ground. They transmit information when there's danger in one place. The other trees that are further away, they adapt. They find adaptations to avoid the danger, and they with chemical processes that they leverage. And you have insects as well that detect heat, also communicate the danger, or even communicate like the lack of water or nutrients, and that could be exchanged below the ground. So the way nature communicates with chemical processes, with light, with color, it's really fascinating, and it's in itself a domain that could be studied. And adapting to changing conditions. So how does nature adapt to changing conditions? And it's by incorporating diversity. So there are diverse adaptation mechanisms, diverse organisms, diverse species that cooperate with each other. Diversity helps adaptation and helps everybody strive. Self-renewal. So just like snakes that shed their skin, and they keep their health and their cleanliness and maintain their integrity. Embodying resilience. So the resilience of being able to be in different places, and like for example, the mushrooms and the fungi, the wood wide web that we talked about, the fact that how it communicates and takes information, and in taking this information, they make what the decisions and the solutions necessary in order to strive in areas that are safe. So this resilience and this decentralization, the process of decentralization, and to really respond to everything that is happening in the environment, evolved to survive. So we talked also about the fact that nature keeps knowledge. So nature retains the knowledge from lived experiences. And that's why in nature we find many strategies that are repeated. So in nature replicates strategies that work. And that's why we even find different organisms that repeat the different strategies, that repeat a strategy that is common. Like, for example, the way, like being able to hide, to dissipate itself in nature in order to hide from predators, or to mimic another predator. Like, for example, this is that made itself look like a hummingbird in order to avoid the other birds. It's a kind of dupri, so it tricks birds to thinking it's another bird rather than an insect that could be eaten. So that's how it preserves itself. And diversity, integrating diversity, like for example the platypus, and how it's a mammal and a bird. It has many different aspects of mammals and birds and lizards all in one organism. That is really fascinating, and it tells you how nature is creative. Actually, there's creativity efficiency in nature. There's always new adaptations, new process and changes that happen throughout Earth evolution. And so integrating the unexpected. This is a redwood tree, and redwood trees are really fascinating. I visited the forest in California, and what's wonderful about them is that they maintain their integrity when in wildfires. They have a resistance to fires, whether it's in their bark, the material that they created ways to adapt to this condition, which is wildfires, and that's how they integrate the unexpected. And this also applies to earthquakes and how nature really revives itself and resurrects after unexpected catastrophes that happen, natural catastrophes. So integrate development with growth. This is also an interesting life's principle where we find that in nature we have modular systems, like, for example, the beehive that is created from modules that are repeated, and they're really well integrated and material efficient. They're actually studied that this form, it embodies material efficiency, and also how nature self-organizes. So we see so many animals that travel in packs or that hunt in packs, and they organize themselves as a community, and also create life grows from the bottom up. So it starts from the soil, from small elements like what we were talking about, the lichen, the moss, that gives way to plants, and then that gives way to more complex plants, organisms, to trees, to mature forest ecosystems. So everything small starts at a small scale from the ground, and it grows to become more complex and greater. So everything starts from the bottom up. So being resource efficient, there are so many examples of resource efficiency in nature. Like, for example, the hermit crab and how it recycles shells, takes on new shells that it collects from its environment and adapts it. The form of a pelican, the pelican's beak, and how it expands in order to be able to fish. So that's how it can accumulate fish and stay in water and consume fish. And then using low energy processes. This is very common with the cactuses, and how they have thorns in order to protect themselves from the heat, the desert, succulents. And another example of low energy processes is the storks and how they spread their wings, and they benefit from the wind, and they, without using a lot of energy in order to fly, they just they spread their wings and they let the air lift them and take them where they're on their immigration path, on their migration path. Another example is using life-friendly chemistry. So nature creates chemistry that is beneficial for other organisms. For example, in nature we always have products that can be broken down into benign elements that are also beneficial for other organisms. Like, for example, the hyena as a scavenger that eats carcasses and decompose those carcasses into elements that could be digested by the earth, building with a small subsets of elements. Like, for example, how bees and wasps, they create their from specific particles that are replicated as well from small subsets of particles, and they're all organic and they can be recycled. Doing chemistry in water. So in nature we don't have extreme pHs. Everything is balanced. The pH in nature is balanced. The proportion of acidity, it's always manageable by other organisms in its environment. So all the transformations that happen, the chemical transformations, they happen in balanced pH rather than heat, like in high pressure and high temperatures and excessively acidic or alkaline conditions that are present in our industries that are creating a lot of pollution. So this is something that we need to take into account, is understanding all those conditions that we create in order to produce, that they be in tune with nature as well. So how can we integrate biomimicry and life's principles into our own communities, our own living spaces, and specifically in our Rotary clubs? Because most of us were part of Rotary. So I felt like it was a good reflection to see how we can integrate life's principles and biomimicry into our clubs. So what I did is I created a questionnaire that I'm going to share with you. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing screen. So I created a questionnaire that will allow you to reflect in a way to understand how life principles happen and how nature operates, and really integrate all of those ideas and those principles that are really present in nature. How can we integrate those principles within our community and with the way we do things. So I'm going to share this questionnaire with you in the chat. And I'm going to thank you so much for being present and being with me. And I thought what I shared inspired you and can help you within your work and your life. So, and I'd love to have feedbacks on what you think, what could be done better, improve, how could this serve a good purpose for what you're working on as a community or, for different projects. And I'd really be happy to continue this conversation with you.
Fantastic, Joanna. That was absolutely wonderful. Oh my gosh. I loved I loved a lot of it, but the interdependence, it's funny if we as humans could figure that out, that we depend on each other, that it's not just everybody, one person does everything. That interdependence was just, I love that. So just absolutely fantastic. Now, Jody, go ahead. I know you have a.
Thank you so much.
You bet.
Is my screen is visible?
Yes, we see
Started.
you.
Yep.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Gianna, for your excellent presentation. And I'm actually an environmentalist, and I know the interconnection of this thing because symbiosis is one of algae and bacteria relationship that is very important for the microbiological reactions. Where the wastewater is generated into the industry, and that wastewater basically getting treated with this concept only. And there are the different filters are designed that is that even at home also we are having the filtration this thing, so we use the charcoal, so that is giving a very good base for the bacterial this thing, and once it is getting exhausted and then we are replacing it. So that is the basic concept, and the way you are actually have shown the interconnection of the overall nature and the this thing relationship, that is really very inspiring, and a lot of understanding we have built up today with your vast experience, and great your expertise. Thank you so much for this. So in recognition of your generous contribution as a guest speaker at Earth Talks, a weekly global dialogue hosted by the Rotary Earth Network Club, so we sincerely appreciate your contribution. Thank you so much, Laurie and Karen, for this all opportunity and for this great speaker introducing to all of us. So our next speaker is Mariana Rojas, who will present on the from waste to watts and green hydrogen and biogas powering rural transformation. So you all are welcome, and we will definitely share the registration link, and I'm going to share the link into the chat. So please register to, and welcome to all.
Thank you, Nick. Fantastic. Thank you so much. Okay, we have lots of questions up. It is about 11:55. We're going to end up stopping the recording. Lori, you want to do that right on the top of the hour? We can do that? Okay. And then, but then we'll continue going on with questions. Joanna, you do have time to stay. It's okay?
Sure.
Good. Fantastic. Thank you. Anna Maria, go ahead.
Hello, I have a simple question. Are you in the same eco club with Brown in Lebanon?
Yes.
So
Very
please, you must do something with us because we have a chain of eco clubs, and your presentation of this night, this afternoon, is really interesting. So
Thank
please,
you.
and next time or in 2 weeks when it will happen, it will be very, very interesting to be together. So the
Yeah.
world is a very small world. This is a
Yes.
a very simple occasion. And congratulations, you are an excellent presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Go ahead, Lori.
And Karen, I will turn the recording off in 4 minutes. But Joanna, I am so excited about your questionnaire and your presentation. And when we get the whole package put together of the blog and the podcast and the recording, I would love to share that package along with your questionnaire to Luca and the network of eco Rotary clubs, like Anna said. I'd also like to share it with, we have a bunch of, a couple of e-clubs that are working together because, we all have different gifts. And if we work together like nature, this is what we're doing. So if I share your biomimicry for Rotary, is that something that we can, or that you could send back to the club leaders? Like, or how do we'll talk offline. How do we make it possible that this can go to other clubs everywhere who would be interested?
Sure, we could share life's principles. Probably I could share an explanatory sheet about life's principles and we annex it with the questionnaire. And that way we could initiate a reflection on our clubs and how we could resemble nature more and how we could get inspiration from nature to better our clubs. So yeah, that would be fun and interesting and, beneficial.
Yes. Okay, we'll talk afterward.
Fantastic.
Sure.
Yeah, and the way I got Joanna to come speak is she filled out, Lori, I think you sent her a project teaser or somebody sent her the project teaser form and she just was going to do a project teaser and I looked at it and I thought, oh my God, this would be just a full-time presentation. So Joanna, thank you for switching from just that 2 to 3 minute presentation to a full presentation.